Hey, welcome to the Friday night recap show. There's Diggsy. This is Wizzy. We're done with week 4. Where's Kenny? Kenny's in Florida, man. He's trying to get himself all tanned up for week 5 of the football season. So it's just going to be me and Diggs. And I tell you what, we had 2 of what we probably thought 6A Division I state contenders go down in 1 week, back-to-back nights, which was wild. And then we had a 6A Division II contender just completely dominate yet again, and to the point now where, we'll talk about the South Lake Carroll score, but there's not going to be a loss on the schedule until we get into the playoffs now. And to be honest with you, if they stay healthy, I can't see them not being in the state title game. They're just playing at a different level, and there's no reason for them not to have their starters sit the second half the rest of the way their offense is clicking right now in defense. So,
yeah, you're talking about there's levels to this, and there is absolutely levels to this. And South Lake Carroll is going to have what we call the South Oak Cliff problem at this point because they played their top 2 games in this district early. And now, the rest of it, as we'll talk about, 4-6A is very competitive from the bottom, from 3 to 9 now. You can see all 3 games were within 1 score, walk-off wins, just back and forth. So you can see all kinds of craziness in this district. But South Lake Carroll is not that team. They're going to be beating all these teams by 50, 60. So can they stay focused? But that's what Riley Dodge, I think he's going to be good at that. He's going to be good at kind of keeping them focused and on the right track. But sometimes it can get a little bit difficult, but man, it was incredible. And with that comes opportunity. Now I can see Waxahachie being a potential state championship kind of a team. Allen now is going to jump up as a team that you could look at that could maybe win Division I the way they're playing. So it is a wide open Division I. I know a lot of people talked about North Crowley and Duncanville being a step below and things maybe kind of taking a step backward for them and opening up some opportunity for other teams. And that is exactly what happened this week.
Yeah, exactly. We saw it Thursday night, a big win with Rockwall, but you look at some of the scores from tonight, Tire Legacy takes out Crowley. Crowley was our number 2 at the beginning of the season. Not anymore. Lakeridge still had 2 100-yard rushers, but they just had nothing to stop any of the rushers that North Forney had. North Forney had 8 touchdowns on the ground. It was ridiculous. In Mansfield, they played midway close, but continue to struggle on defense. So I don't even know where we'll find out in the dump where you're going to rank 2 through 7 here. But
everybody in District 3-6A lost this week. We went 0-7. If you were a District 3-6A team, it was not a good week. And as when we get to 10-6A, you're going to see the other 4 games. And we basically had a whitewash. 6-0. We had 10-6A versus 3-6A since we have 2 7-team districts, and they mostly played each other. We saw Mansfield played Midway and Longview played Ruston. But every single 10-6A team beat every single 3-6A team. That is a loaded district over there, Ward. And I mean, it is just incredible what 10-6A is.
You brought up a good point yesterday. Where would North Crowley fall in 10-6A? I mean, granted, they're playing tougher competition, but where would they fall? I mean, you want to talk about it when we get to 10-6A or?
I genuinely think they'd have a hard time making the playoffs because right now, because everybody puts their best foot forward in this district, and you're like, okay, well, Rockwell had a nice win, but look at what he did. Look at what North Forney did. Look at what Forney did. Every single team had a defining win this week, and it's just one of those crazy districts that every game is going to be a battle royal. And similarly, like I mentioned with District 4-6A, if you ignore South Lake Carroll, and probably when Trinity plays them, look at how close all 3 of those other games were. Northwest Eaton, 1-point game. And that was a game where no scores in the 4th quarter. That was 31-30 in the 3rd quarter, and it stayed the same. That missed extra point was the difference. And your guy, Caracella, 300 yards rushing.
Exactly. Big night for him. And if I didn't have Hat Head, I'd do a tip of the hat to LD Bell because they're really playing some solid ball. They wasted that last 5 minutes to get down to field goal range for a guy who kicked a 60-yarder. All he had to do was kick an 18-yarder to win it. So that was going to be a no-brainer. Kudos to LD Bell for that big win.
Yeah, 31-28 over Keller, 28-21 Keller Central over Timber Creek. It's going to be hard to find wins in this district if you are in the middle because Carroll, Byron Nelson, and Trinity are going to be probably – even at this point now, I'm going to kind of backtrack. I don't know if Byron Nelson is in that range. I think they're going to be struggling with these other 6 teams, but every week it's going to be a battle when you have these games. But South Lake Carroll, just a dominant win over Trinity. And that was a game that was never in doubt. No. I mean, even when Trinity scored its one score, they got the 2-point conversion. It was one of those 4-point touchdowns instead of a 7-point touchdown because Carroll was just dominant in all 3 phases of the game.
And if you're Pittsburgh, University of Pittsburgh, you better get my man Rendon to sign on the dotted line. You sign something if he hasn't already, because he'll be getting all kinds of offers from bigger schools if they get much bigger than the ACC squad. But let's take a look at this. Absolutely no problem for Allen. And we saw Plano live. And I thought they could at least score a little bit with Chance Cully, but no. Allen's on a different level. Princeton, kudos to Princeton. How about Princeton pulled off? They didn't even have the big stats in that game, too. If you look at that Princeton game, they took advantage of 4 Rock Hill turnovers to pull this one off. But that puts them in the playoff picture. Am I right?
Oh, they're absolutely in the playoff picture at this point. And even though Plano East is 0-4 right now, this is kind of a crazy stat with Plano East. Of course, I keep my Plano East stats. Every team they played is 4-0. So you got Roy City, North Forney, Princeton, and Plano West all sitting. And 3 of those 4 are completely surprise 4-0 teams with Roy City, Plano West, and Princeton right now. So Princeton and Plano West are absolutely in the playoff matchup. And with that Princeton game, kind of a crazy finish with that. Princeton was up 2 scores with 2 minutes left. Rock Hill goes down and scores to make it a 1-score game. They get the onside kick. They get down to the 2-yard line, and Jordan Mosley, the guy that plays both ways, with an interception in the end zone to save that game for Rock Hill. That, as you mentioned, the 4th turnover. Right. And it seems like the theme of a lot of these teams that are kind of that are going to that next step is the 2-way player. Jordan Grant, you saw it at the Plano West game. He was safety and he was there. We saw it when we get to we talk about Grayson Meyer, just an incredible 2-way player, and Jordan Mosley, a 2-way player. So some of these surprise teams, 2-way players, and they're doing it. But when you play Allen and Prosper, it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, because Prosper scored 68, and they had 4 turnovers. They committed 4 turnovers, still got 68. And we were both at that Plano East, Plano West game. The turnovers at the end were absolute backbreakers, heartbreakers, because you guys have a freshman running back, Sheldon, that had a tremendous game. I think he had like 170 yards and a couple scores. So moving on.
What I'm going to need from you, Ward, I got to throw in my when I get to have my cheat sheet. I want a shot of that last fumble. I'm sure you filmed it because I'm hearing from the press box it was not a fumble. It was the kickoff one that he was down by contact. So you'll have to send it to me in super slow motion because you had the camera, you were there.
Yeah, I got a perfect shot of it. They're saying the knee was down before it came out.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to take a look and let you know because it's right in front of me. How about some of these scores? Bowie over Grand Prairie by 50. Lamar against Martin. Lamar is really – they put up 561 total yards. Martin is really struggling without Jesse Ford. Even when they had him, who knows what happened there. And Arlington, they gave up a whole bunch of yards to my man Federico. I think he got 200 again, but they still pulled it off, and they're undefeated while Haltom's struggling for a win.
Haltom that was dominant in that game. It was like 21-7 at one point, and then they just couldn't get it going in the second half. Kudos to Arlington Lamar. I mean, we pretty much gave them the Undertaker treatment earlier on the podcast, and all they do is just have a dominant win over Arlington Martin. They're in there, and for pretty much 3/4 of the game, the Friday night experience, I'm thinking Haltom just transforms. It's like Transformers. They turn into a different thing once district starts, and they had Arlington on the ropes. And a little bit of 8-6A news from what I hear, Step reported this, and some of my Arlington ISD insiders. It looks like Glassby Stadium is going to be open this week.
There. Yep. Seguin against the Colony Thursday night. We'll have a guy there just to see what this thing looks like. That's pretty exciting, actually. All right, what do we got in 9-6A? Because when we get there, I was actually at the Wiley-Saxe game. I had to sit there in a power outage. There's a lot of power outages had a lot to do with the top North Texas games up there in the north part of North Texas. But we sat there for a good probably 10, 15 minutes. When we came back, Dalen Gordon had a game and a half there. If you saw his stats in that game, he pulled off the kick return to give him the lead, 99-yarder. He had a combined like 279 total yards, plus He's led up to the game-winning score with 1 second or 1 minute left. They scored from the 1. That was him getting 60 yards down to the 1. Big game for him. They won 34-27. Talk me through some of these other games. Lakeview Centennial finally got a win.
Lakeview Centennial may end up being the second best team in this district because Wiley and Saxe, you look at their last couple of weeks, some questions there, but Lakeview Centennial, they look like they're finding another gear. And we talked about Haltom and Arlington being one of those kind of a tale of two halves. Rowlett was up 17-0 on Naaman Forest, and Naaman Forest turned it on in the second half with 3 touchdowns to overcome that 17-0 deficit. This is why I don't count those halftime scores, Ward, because it's a 48-minute game for a reason. And big kudos to Naaman Forest for coming back in the second half with a big win over Rowlett. They've definitely put themselves in the playoff picture. 9-6A, Wiley East had the week off this week. It is going to be a battle because Wiley, Saxe, Lakeview Centennial, North Garland played Wiley really well. Naaman Forest and Rowlett and Garland, all of those teams are going to be very much like we talked about with 4-6A, are going to be right there in the mix. It's going to come down to all those intangibles, turnovers. I'm a little disappointed in Saxe. Saxe, not necessarily that they lost to Wiley. They just look like they're missing something. They just look a little bit off right now.
They moved Dirk. It looks like they moved Dirk Williams over to receiver now. They got a new quarterback in there. McCaffrey, not that McCaffrey, but he's in there throwing around. So we'll see what's going on. They got to figure it out, though. Here's the 10-6A scores that we want to talk about. There's that Rockwall win. Kudos to Rockwall over North Crowley. It's on the road, too, after giving up 70 points to them at home last year. Brent Rickard came through with 292 yards, 2 touchdowns. Give North Crowley their due with Jarrell Smith. He had 5 touchdowns, but Rockwall had the last blast, and these people that like to do the whole he beat him, so he beat them deal. Rockwall beat North Crowley, so Louisville beat Rockwall. Does that mean Louisville is ahead of North Crowley in your rankings? We'll have to figure that out when you come out with those deals.
I think very well that has to be the case because when you look at what North Crowley has done, who have they beaten? And everything kind of calibrates right now. And what I mean by that, it's not like you have a situation where this team beat that team and then you have to kind of figure out, were there turnovers or was it anything kind of fluky or crazy with it? I just think North Crowley, that's where they're at, and that's how strong 10-6A is. But one thing that's kind of a little bit of a calibration, we talk about Roy City. I know you're running their story this week to find out about those young sophomores. Roy City, even though they've looked good, you look at what they did against Saginaw Boswell, but then you look at what Forney does against Saginaw Boswell. It's Roy City. They're such a fun team, but they just seem like a step below everybody right now. Ruston beating Longview is expected. Longview, Ruston is one of the top teams in Longview, in Louisiana. So don't look at that and go, oh, look at Longview. They're 1-3 at this point. But Ruston is a good team. They're a top 100 team in the nation. So that's still a good loss for Longview.
Yeah, these teams are flexing going into district play too. Forney by 55 points. They had Osborne only had to have 8 carries to get his 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. So these are guys that have had injuries that don't have to worry about it now because they're only playing a half until they put a beating. Of course, North Forney we put up in the last in the 3-6A screen, and they put a hurting behind Legend Bay, who still, we talked about how he's going to run and throw it. I'm only seeing him run with a lot of success. Maybe they're holding that off till 10-6A play, but we'll find out for sure. 11-6A, how about the win of the night, I think? Waxahachie over Duncan. Maybe not the win of the night because we'll see something in 5A that was tremendous, 3 scores down. But a huge win. Granted, it's at home. They didn't even have any really big stats. They just made plays. I mean, Joey Meyer only threw for like 120. And they were down 27-9, but I think that the game breaker there was the Jordan Smith kickoff return for a touchdown. It brought them to 27-15 when they very well could have just not given up, but just like all hope is lost. He gives them a little energy, and they just fight back, and they score late in the game to win that thing 28-27. Huge win by Waxahachie. And don't sleep on Cedar Hill. I mean, we're going to find out next week when they're playing Lancaster. But when you're putting up 62 from a team that struggled to get wins last year, when they did get them, they weren't really all that much of a wide gap there. They're blowing teams out here. We'll see what happens next week when Lancaster happens. And DeSoto hadn't given up a point since we were throwing around shovels at them. They haven't played the greatest competition, but we saw what Mesquite did with North Forney last week. They gave them a game in the first half. Now it's been 2 quarters and then another 4 against DeSoto to show where they're really at here.
I was looking at the play-by-play of that Waxahachie-Duncanville game because, I saw 28-27, Waxahachie goes ahead with 2.5 minutes. I wanted to see what that drive looked like that Duncanville had with about 2 minutes left to kind of find out. And Duncanville had 3rd and 1 at the Waxahachie 27. So at this point, it's a 44-yard field goal. This is a game-winning field goal at this point. They could not move the ball 1 yard on Waxahachie with 2 plays. That's that D line that Waxahachie has with Clausen and some of those really big time players. This is a program defining win for Waxahachie to not only overcome Duncanville. Yeah, it's at home. Yeah, it's early. You can say, but quite a bit, but they got it. We keep saying Waxahachie's got to show us the win. They showed us the win, and it looked like if you were there, it probably felt like Duncanville was just going to win the game because here they are driving. They're in Waxahachie territory, 3rd and 1, one more first down, probably a chip shot field goal. Waxahachie holds them 2 tries, 1 yard. That's next level defense.
That's big time. And they head up to DeSoto and very well could take the district crown if they beat DeSoto. I mean, obviously we're putting the cart ahead of the horse, but those are the 2 major dogs in there. If they can win at DeSoto, man, they really got to start thinking about getting a district crown. And who would have thought that besides me, who kind of predicted this earlier in the year, and then I backed off of it like a little punk that I am. All right.
They're not thinking about district crown anymore. They're thinking about the big one. They're thinking about state championship.
Absolutely. How about some of these scores? And Granbury with the big win against Fossil Ridge. I like that one, 27-14. Richland kind of shut her down in the second half. They jumped all over them with Jaysean Gibson, 180-some yards and a couple scores. Aledo, boy, they got to rest guys in that game against Birdville. And remember, it was only 2 weeks ago we were like, Birdville, Grapevine, this could be something that – and then Birdville's kind of fallen off. Granted, playing a Aledo team, you can't judge too much on that. But what do you think about this?
That game, Aledo-Birdville, I think was 21-7, 14-7 late first half. But Aledo figured it out in the second half. But, there was a point where I started getting the Aledo texts from my Aledo people who were feeling very worried about what was going on there. To me, we had 2 pretty big upsets, Granbury beating Fossil Ridge, as you mentioned. But Coach Beatty over at Denton, 1-year turnaround job. Usually takes 2 years, but a 1-year turnaround job. Azel was the de facto 4th-place team from everybody because they brought so much back this year, and Denton with a big win over them, and Brewer was not competitive against Richland. 3, 4, 5 wide open in this district as we're going to be going through. When you play Denton, Ryan, and Aledo, it's not going to look pretty, but there's still some playoff decisions to be had in this district.
Billy Lanier there just said his name. Don't say his name or he's going to appear. How about is Arlington Heights giving up a point? I don't know if they're going to give up a point. I'm starting to wonder if they're going to give up a point all regular season. I mean, they're going to eventually. How's a bad snap or something? It's going to be a safety for 2 points. But they're playing Chisholm Trail was going in with a 60-point win. Pascal with a 59-point win. Wyatt with 50. I think we have our 4 playoff teams if you look at these scores, right?
I think Saginaw will have something to say about it. They had the week off, but there's definitely 5 teams for playoff spots available. I think Arlington Heights is definitely going to be one of them, Pascal. But Wyatt, Chisholm Trail, Saginaw, we already got the Wyatt Chisholm Trail game. You went down those country roads and found that game out. But I think Saginaw will definitely be part of the conversation when we get into that district.
All right, with the game we were at, you talked about already Grayson Ryder with Meyer with a huge game, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. They were running in mud there in the first half offensively, and then they turn around and get to 2 late touchdowns for the win there. Boy, we can't figure out Heritage, right? I mean, they seem like they have the offensive talent, but then this is going to be a theme. 3 turnovers. You can't recover from 3 turnovers against a Frisco team that's got a coach's son behind center. Lone Star, another big day for Trey Wright. I think he was like 14 for 18, so he was just about unstoppable for as long as he was in there. How do you feel about some of these games?
Yeah, the Wakeland-Reedy game, it was a shock to me. Reedy was dominant for 38 clock minutes, 10-0. But then they had some injuries, and Wakeland just never gave up. Meyer, and again, 3 turnovers. You talk about turnovers with Heritage. Frisco-Reedy had 3 turnovers as well, and they couldn't overcome it. And that's a big problem for Reedy because you start to look at the way at the district at the playoff run. That means you got Highland Park in the second round if you're the 3rd place team in that district. So that's going to be a little rough for them. But But Frisco, Wakeland, McKinney North might start to get a little bit of positive momentum. They needed that first win to get off the snide against Sherman, and they finally got it.
Excellent. How about my man Ben Abekwe had he had a big game down there with 278 yards and 2 touchdowns. West Mesquite shook off North Mesquite fairly early in that one. Carrollton Creekview with the big win. Newman Smith finally gets on the board with the W. Not anything that we didn't expect here, right?
Yeah, 6-5A is kind of shaking out the way we thought it would. In 7-5A, talking about things shaking out the way we thought that they would, Midlothian with an absolute dominant win over Harker Heights. And that's important for you 11-6A fans, because a lot of people thought if there was going to be one team that could win 11-6A versus 12-6A game, it would be Killeen Harker Heights. And we already saw what Cedar Hill did to Midlothian. We don't even know if Cedar Hill is going to make the playoffs. Right. And now Midlothian beating Harker Heights like that, I think 11-6A is going to feel good about that first round.
Absolutely. Another huge game for Buck Randall, by the way, 300-some yards and 5 touchdowns. But that's somebody's already wasted him for his fantasy football with a loss, so other people still got him to play. I won't say who has him or not. How about Red Oak? Big game for Braden Robinson. 16 catches. They went to him all night long. 16 catches for 194 yards, and he helped them pull out a victory.
Yeah, Joshua Elk City, we don't have a score on yet. We got to send our intern up to Oklahoma to get that out. Lufkin with a big win over Tyler High. And Highland Park avenges that Pulaski Academy loss from a couple of years ago with a big, dominant 58-26 win over Pulaski Academy.
I want to talk about the Seguin game. Seguin was up 22-6, 1 minute left in the game. Give up a touchdown, onside kick, another touchdown. Grapevine in overtime. Kicks the field goal to go up. 4th down, Seguin lines up with a field goal to tie, and they're like, forget all this mess. They ran a fake field goal. Holder throws it for a touchdown. They come out with a win. But, boy, that was an Emerson-type meltdown at that situation. And then the Colleyville Heritage game, Timberview was down 3 scores twice, came all the way back to win it. That was a very impressive game, and more impressive with Miles Davis. He threw 3 picks, but he didn't let that drop his demeanor down. He came back and threw 3 touchdowns. Got him back in that thing.
Yeah, we talked to that Burleson is going to be part of the conversation when it comes to this district. That was a back and forth game against Summit. So Burleson might have a chance to, losing to Seguin and Summit, that's going to be tough, especially since they have Colleyville Heritage, Timberview, and Argyle left. But man, Burleson is a much improved team. It's not going to come across in their record, but it's definitely coming across in their performance. And the Colony with a big bounce back, because remember what Everman did to Grapevine last week and what happened with Colleyville Heritage and the Colony. So again, the middle of this district is going to have some parity.
How about Anna over Lovejoy? 28 unanswered points in the second half. This game actually had to be played up in Anna because of the power outage. Zeandre Williams was just incredible in that game, especially in the second half. Melissa making a statement win here. They play Anna, I believe. We just had a comment on that. They play them next week. Whoever the woman was predicted Melissa to win by 10. How about that? And then where's Walnut Grove? I can say the week off. Walnut Grove, and it's got to be must-see TV. I can't wait for that game whenever that happens.
Yeah, Lovejoy is now dropping down to my number 4 team in this district. I'm going to put Melissa up to 3 because Lovejoy, I kept saying, it's a Jacob Janicek show. Somebody's going to step up. Nobody has yet, so I got them at number 4. But Emerson struggled with Denison, so I think, this district is still 4 strong. But you never know. Emerson versus Lovejoy, 1 game, crazier things have happened.
Yeah. All right, we talked about 5A Division II. Southwood Cliff wasn't going to have much of a challenge there. The big one was Woodrow Wilson, Seagoville. Woodrow Wilson pulling that thing off by 7.
Yeah, Woodrow Wilson, that's a big win. That's almost a playoff defining win because that gets him with a buffer win over Seagoville, probably puts them in the 4th spot. I don't know if Samuel Hillcrest has gone final, but I think Samuel was a favorite over Hillcrest. Adamson with a big win. That was a come-from-behind win over Thomas Jefferson, 26-14. And Sauk is going to do what Sauk does, just like South Lake Carroll. South Oak Cliff, South Lake Carroll, pretty much going to just go ahead and pencil them into week 12 and figure out what they've got going on there.
Those 2 guys are done. Ennis doubled up Kaufman. We were told in our podcast to watch out for Poteet. We weren't supposed to watch out for their defense, apparently, because they didn't do much against Crandall. Midlothian Heritage with another huge win. And then Terrell taking out Corsicana. They got Kaufman next week. I think I might go out to Terrell. Terrell fans, I might come see your Tigers next Friday, all right? give me whatever the meal of the day is out there. Make sure you have it for me. I got a couple chins to get in there.
I hear Terrell has great press box hospitality, so you're going to go down those country roads. Heard Crandall got dinged up in this game, so hopefully everybody's okay. But next week, if Crandall has a little bit of a drop-off, you might understand why with some of the injuries. Ennis with kind of a buffer win over Kaufman. That's going to make Kaufman, after we kind of had a little chat about this on our podcast board, it's going to make it hard for Kaufman to make the playoffs after losing to Ennis, still with Terrell, Midlothian Heritage, and Crandall still to go. But Crandall-Kaufman, when you have the battle of Kaufman County.
That's true. They're probably going to pick up two what we'd call upsets to get into the postseason now. All right, let's take a look at some 4A action. Life Oak Cliff. You like to see that, don't you? Because since you picked the quarterback there in the fantasy, I may have taken. Who knows what the stats are yet, but that could be a dangerous deal for me.
Yeah, Springtown with a big win over China Spring. Alpharado, they do not drop off. This is the third big win that they've had over a Waco Connolly team that went hammer for hammer with Grandview last week. And Castleberry is a team to keep an eye on. They keep doing some really good things in their district. Godley with a big win over Waxahachie Life. And then 7-4A, what we kind of call the District of Doom. Look at some of these scores.
Yeah, you got Panther Crypt dominating. They got themselves a solid big three. Now that Donovan Webb's playing both ways, he ran for 125 and 2 scores. Jalen Lott's got 2 scores on 147 yards, and Fry threw for 303. They are getting themselves ready for that showdown with Salina next week up in Salina.
As a spoiler alert for that comment, one of the bigger upsets in small school, Pottsboro with a big win over Munster. But Salina Franklin, that was a little bit more competitive than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, me too.
But Paris, again, 6 strong in this district. You got to figure out every week what you have to do to make it to that next level, just like 10-6A. Kimball Carter continue to be great. But Lincoln Ward, is a team that is right up there in the big three. Now, I think they're going to make a run for Kimball and Carter because they are playing some fantastic football. North Dallas in progress. We don't have a final on that against Roosevelt. A game that were we at Brock and Southwest? Ward?
Yeah, we had the country roads down there to see what Brock was all about, and we found out real quickly. First quarter, we found out what they were about. We'll be in Bridgeport next week, so Bridgeport's taking on Ranchview, so where the country roads are heading out that way, and we see what Bridgeport's doing to teams.
And what's going on with Glenrose? Glenrose is struggling to find a win. The Robinson Rockets. Who said we're only going to talk about DFW football? The Robinson Rockets with a big win, and not West Texas, but West, Texas with a big win, 34-0. How about Crum? I got some flack on Instagram for putting Crum in my top 5. That's what I'm seeing, Ward. 69-44 over Ranchview. Henderson, big win over Gainesville. Ponder, 79-7 over Bonham. Farmersville, big win, 48-0. Caddo Mills kind of shows they played Sunnyvale tight last week. Another big win over Brownsboro, 52-45.
Absolutely. Mineral Wells kind of got tripped up, and there's Eagle Mountain again with another big win. Sunnyvale takes out Van by a couple of scores. And Canton, we took the country roads out there a couple weeks ago. They're still beating up on teams that they should kind of beat up on.
Some 3A scores. We were at the Vernon-Richland game, kind of just to introduce ourselves to Richland. Vernon, no problem there, 42-7. City View with a big win over Iowa Park, 37-17. Paradise with a big bounce-back win after that loss last week to Eagle Mountain, 48-7. Malakoff. They did not like the disrespect.
And they'll never see this because it's an East Texas school. They'll never see this. But that's our kudos to Malakoff for anybody that's watching this from way out there in East Texas. Big win over the Zebras. Old Mate Pearl got himself a win. And then
Whitney with a big win over Rogers. Dunbar with a nice win over Madison. How about Palmer? Palmer is my number 1 team in 6-3A right now, and they continue to show it. Edgewood's a salty team that they can put up some points, so big win with Edgewood. 7-3A, Mineola, Atlanta, Commerce, Whitesboro, 2 straight weeks for Whitesboro. But Winsboro, I saw Whitesboro and thought Winsboro. I was like, Winsboro lost. But Winsboro got everything they wanted from Hooks. That's our number 1 team in 3A Division I right now. Look at that Bowie Dublin score. I don't know if that's a real score, but it's a score on our scoreboard.
Probably didn't feel real to Dublin, that's for sure.
Comanche beats Toller. Toller is struggling, but Peaster is a team that we're going to keep an eye on and keep looking at. So some big games out in 3A and across the DFW area.
Dump's coming up in 10 seconds. Thanks for joining us on the Friday Night Recap. Now stay right there and take a look what Diggs does to analyze all these games.